What's up, grinders? It is hot as balls right now here in Sydney. I am sweating out of orifices I honestly didn't know I even had. So I figured, you know what? Now is a great time to do a video review because by the end of this video, I should be a couple of kilos lighter. So we're going to be looking at Evading the Foreigner Speak Trap When Learning a Language by Stuart Jay Raj. Now, this guy's name has been dropped a couple of times on my channel, but when I did go check out his channel previously, after I saw like his name, I noticed that the majority of his videos were basically in Thai about random topics, so I was like, yeah, okay, there's nothing really here for me to see. But then someone sent me this video directly, which is obviously about language learning, so let's check it out. I have heard, because from the comment of the person who sent it to me, that he speaks really good Thai, so let's see what he's got to say.
Xin chào, สวัสดีครับ 大家好
Okay, so his Chinese pronunciation is quite good just from that alone, although he purposely over-enunciated that word. By the way, he just said hello.
Kabar and hola a todos. I'm Stuart Jay Raj, and today we're going to talk about a topic that is really important whether you're learning any language that's not your mother tongue. It's the whole issue of foreigner talk. And what I've found is no matter what language it is that I'm learning, there seems always to be a foreigner version that native speakers of that language think that the learner has to speak like, even though very often it's nothing like the real language that's spoken.
I'm not sure what he meant by that. I don't think natives ever sit here and go, okay, this foreigner is now learning my language, therefore they must speak with a specific foreigner type of like manner. I'm not sure what he's getting at with that.
I was just doing some Vietnamese learning this morning, and I was going through this grammar that I picked up in Hanoi. And you can see it's a concise Vietnamese grammar for non-native speakers. Now, what does that mean? A grammar for non-native speakers? Okay, it's in English, but does that mean that there's a grammar for native speakers as opposed to non-native speakers?
No, all that means, and this is pretty much obvious to anyone, is that this is a grammar book detailing how the language works from the perspective of someone who doesn't speak the language so that they can get an insight into the language as opposed to someone who already speaks the language and wants to know how what they're saying works, like, you know, a native speaker.
Logic would tell you no, but even the way that you see it described in here, it's as though that native speakers of a language will sometimes think that, oh, learners of a language, they probably won't be able to understand this, so we'll just tell them this part of the language.
I think what he's talking about is more like a standardization of the language and then also the dumbing down of the language as opposed to like a different type of language. So what often happens with language learning materials, and this is why I've made videos about, you know, avoiding specifically language learning materials, is that they create a standardized version of the language, which is usually based on, you know, whatever the capital is, and then maybe what even is, you know, seen and heard on TV, which is usually not the same as what's actually on the street. And this is the same with every language. Like when I was an actor many, many eons ago, a lot thinner and had more hair, basically we had to learn a standardized version of the Australian accent, which is why my accent for a lot of foreigners, when they listen to my English, they're like, oh, your English is quite understandable. It's because I learned a standardized version of the Australian accent and I'm no longer speaking what you would generally hear on the street type of thing. So that's realistically what language learning materials are doing. They're just teaching you that standardized accent, and they're also trying to avoid any like what they consider impurities within the language, and also trying to not offend any specific ethnic group within their, you know, language community type of thing.
Which is crazy. Could you imagine how you would feel if you went up to somebody, say in English, and say a Chinese person went up and said, sorry, how you say that? And you'll say, oh, what you think you say? Your answer is spoken back to them in this, oh, what you think you talk? You want sweet sour pork with a fried eye? This stereo.
Yeah, that was pretty cringy, I'm going to be honest. I still don't get what he meant from just that alone, because basically all he did there was speak like a very stereotypical Chinese accent.
The typed version of English that you're putting back to them in English would just be plain rude. But the reality is, when you're learning languages like Thai, Chinese, Indonesian, I see this very thing happen. The native speakers of the language will speak foreigner talk back to them.
What? Okay, I don't know about Thai, but like what will happen generally, for example, with Chinese in China? First, if you speak any Chinese, be very prepared, okay? Because as soon as you start saying words, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to be showered in praise about how amazing your accent is. They may even say things along the lines of, wow, you speak better 普通话 than I speak, type of thing. And then they're just going to revert to their local accents, speak at full speed with you, and expect that you understand everything. They will not dumb down the language in any shape or form for you until they see you staring blankly back at them, and then they'll be like, oh, he didn't get that. Maybe I'll just say it again at the same speed with the exact same words. So they do not speak with any type of foreigner talk. So I'm still not quite sure what he's on about.
So how do you avoid this? Well, from the very get-go, you want to start to get native speaker language rather than the foreigner talk. And there's only one way to do that. What my grandfather said was, when you're...
Sorry, as soon as he said, when my grandfather said, it's like, it's always that thing where it's like, my grandfather said, and then every time you hear this, like generally, they will start like relaying some really stupid, outdated point that's not relevant anymore. I'm not saying that's true for what he's going to say. It just reminds me of like whenever someone says, yeah, but my grandma said if you lay in that position, what's going to happen is your big toe's going to fall off, like something stupid.
Learning a language, you want to avoid asking, how do you say X in such and such language that we're learning? Rather, you want to elicit the natural response. I'll give you an example. In Indonesian, supposing I saw a mother with a cute baby and she's holding it like that, and I've got a little bit of Indonesian under my belt, so I ask her, how do you say cute? She thinks cute. English, cute. Indonesian, lucu. So then she'll tell me lucu.
Okay, I think I get what he's talking about now. So what's going to happen is basically she's directly translating the word, probably just picking some formal version of the word, giving it to you, and then you're just going to speak basically English or some modified version of English grammar with Indonesian put on top. Like it's almost like English is wearing a trench coat made out of Indonesian that's hiding under there, type of thing.
Lucu is cute, and then I'll say to her in my wonderful Indonesian sentence, waduh, bayinya lucu amat. The baby is so lucu. She'll look at me, smile, and say, thank you, terima kasih, and then go on her way. And I think, yes, I've got another Indonesian word or phrase under my belt, and I go on my way, and I'll probably use it for the rest of my life.
And I'm guessing that's not the correct way to say, a baby is cute.
Filtering out any other thing that I hear in my environment. Now, the reality is, well, some Indonesians might say lucu. The reality is, when Indonesians see a cute baby like that, they won't say lucu. They might say, waduh, gemes banget. Now, what is gemes? The baby is so gemes. G-E-M-E-S. Look it up. Gemes, I'll tell you what it means. Actually, I'll show you what it means. This is gemes.
Okay, that was a terrifying face. But okay, what he's basically getting at is that you may say things in a certain way in one language, which totally doesn't apply in another language. Even the way of thinking will not apply. And an easy, simple example of this would be in Chinese. The majority of the time, you don't walk up to someone and go, ni hao, type of thing. What you will do is, like, if you're meeting up with them, you'd go, chilama, which means, have you eaten? And, like, you may not even care if they've eaten, type of thing. It's just something that you say. It's like that filler. Like, we say hello, they say, have you eaten, type of thing. And you get these types of structures, and pretty much, well, the more foreign the language is from English, the more you'll notice that the way of thinking and the structures are very different from English. So obviously this is something that happens in Thai, it's definitely something in Chinese, but it would be less so in other languages that are closer to English, say Spanish and stuff like that. So basically the way to solve this problem is quite simple, is you just observe a lot of the language. You basically watch lots of videos, you pay attention to what they're saying and what they're doing, and then as you see that, you'll start to see and go, oh, okay, so he's actually asking them if they've eaten, but why is he doing that every single time? And then after a while, you'll be like, oh, okay, I get it. It's just a greeting, basically.
I'll tell you again what it means. Here it is. How do you say that in English? I don't really know. There's no word for it that I can think of that is the exact translation of gemes. But this is what many Indonesians will say when they see something cute. Thais as well. When Thais see something really, really cute, picture a ball of lard or a lump of fat, and you just want to sink your fingers and your teeth into it. Man kiao. When Thai see something really cute like that or scrumptious, they'll say man kiao. Now, the question is, when you're a learner of Thai or Indonesian or Vietnamese, how do you know when you see something cute to say, oh, excuse me, how do you say, you wouldn't even think that. you don't know.
Yeah, so the only way to deal with this is you just need to observe the language a lot. You need to watch a lot of the content in the language, and you can't just learn a language from learning material, because learning material is just going to cover the basics of grammar no matter what. And even if it tries to describe the situation to you, it'd just be confusing. You need to see it in action to understand it.
Know that that's how they would react in this situation. And this comes back to why my grandfather said you try and elicit what somebody would say or how they react. Sometimes they might not say a thing. Sometimes they might just make a noise with their mouth or something on their face or body language. You don't know.
I think it's going to be pretty hard to elicit the types of responses you're looking for. Realistically, the best way is just to observe how people interact. And the best way to do that is just watching lots of videos. There's nothing too special about this. You just need a ton of input to be able to see this stuff in action. And also, you're going to make some random mistakes along the way, and you'll learn quite quickly that what you said was not the best way of doing it.
So when we're learning to avoid this foreigner speak and avoid getting the language that the natives think, for example, in Thai, พูดไทยได้ไหม? Can you speak Thai? This is because many foreigners, they'll say, how do you say, can you speak Thai? พูดไทยได้ไหม? In Thai, you have the word ได้, can, which comes from the Chinese.
This is the equivalent of in Chinese, where learners will say 可以 a lot, when in English you would say, for example, I can see that. In Chinese, you don't need to say can in this instance. So it's basically just you've taken English grammar and you've placed the language as like a skin on top of English grammar with some like modifications. And there's nothing wrong with this. You just need to basically, as you progress in the language, focus on these things and improve on them. And realistically, it's unavoidable at the start, because when you start learning a language, what's going to happen is you're going to start with your own full understanding of a grammar in the back of your head, hidden away, and you're going to use that. It's unavoidable. You're going to use that, and then slowly over time you're going to chip away at pieces and go, actually we don't use it like this, and then you're going to put in the grammar that you've learned. And after a long time the English grammar will completely fall away, but at the start you're going to have an English grammar. And even if you're like, let's using the pure comprehensible input strategy of just watching content, at first you're understanding via an English grammar, which is why, say, Spanish via pure comprehensible input is easy, because it's already very close to English grammar. But then Korean via pure comprehensible input is a lot harder, because you can't really use much of your English grammar, and you really need to focus to start seeing how bits fit together.
Chinese word เดือ or in
That was a really weird pronunciation of เดือ.
Cantonese ตัก can or cannot, can cannot ล่ะ. So they will translate, can you speak Thai? พูดไทยได้ไหม? But the reality is, when Thais ask, can you speak, or are you able to speak Thai? They'll probably say พูดไทยเป็นหรือเปล่า? พูดไทยเป็น. This is the word เป็น, the verb to be. Think of it in existence, เป็น. That's a Zippo lighter with a flame flickering. ไม่เป็น. เป็น ไม่เป็น. So พูดไทยเป็นหรือเปล่า? Does Thai exist onto you?
Here's another example, like say from Esperanto, a language that's a lot closer to English. So, for example, you wouldn't say, I miss you in Esperanto. You'd say, vi mankas al mi. And what you're actually saying is, you is lacking to me. So you're going to get this in every language, and it will be to different degrees. And the best way to learn this is just to do a lot of input, do sentence mining. It's not anything too difficult.
You, unto you, ben.
Well, it's not anything too difficult as in to learn to do this, but it's difficult as in to mimic this. It just takes a lot of practice.
หรือเปล่า or not. And if it does, พูดเป็น it exists unto me, or I can speak it. Or พูดไม่เป็น it does not exist unto me, or I cannot speak it. But when the ฝรั่ง asks, there's no way that you'll hear ฝรั่ง being told พูดเป็นหรือเปล่า, because they've asked, can you speak Thai? พูดไทยได้ไหม? And so the Falang might, or the Westerner learning Thai might go their whole lives only knowing ได้ไหม, because once they've learned that, their ears filter out anything else they've heard, and they only use that one sentence. When learning a...
So this is why, for example, you'll never see in any of my Anki videos me having English on the front of a card because I don't want to be in an English mindset when I'm practicing the language. I may have English on the back as a translation of what's on the front and what I'm listening to, but I'll never have English on the front and going into my target language. If I want to go into my target language, what I would do is I'd have closed cards on the front, which is basically you'll see the sentence in your target language with a part of it hidden, and then you need to fill that in mentally on the spot.
Language, try and elicit the native response. Don't listen to what they tell you, listen to what people say to each other. Native speakers say to each other, and you'll come out with a much more authentic version of that language. I'm Stuart Jay Raj.
Okay, so what he was saying is correct. You basically want to focus on, the actual language as opposed to just superimposing, that language onto English. But he didn't really explain it in a very good way, and it took me about half the video to even figure out what he was on about. I thought he was talking about standardization of a language. So it was like, it wasn't explained very well, and it was made more complex than it needed to be. Basically, in summary, here's the problem. The problem is you're learning the language, you're using your own native language grammar, and you're using your own native language way of thinking within that language. Here's the solution. You do a lot of input of that language, and you look for specifically differences between ways of thinking. And you can solve all of this by just doing a lot of sentence mining and a lot of input. So that's pretty much it. If you guys have liked this video, you know what you need to do. Like the video, share it around to anyone who might be interested in these types of topics. And also, if you haven't subbed to the channel already, sub, and there's a Discord down below for anyone who wants to join. And I'll see you all in the next video. And if you're not there, I'm going to...